The sea is calm, too calm, beneath the mirror-like surface of the Arctic waters. A shadow stirs, a shadow the size of a skyscraper lying on its side. It moves slowly, deliberately, pushing millions of gallons of seawater aside with a deep, low vibration that you cannot hear, but you can feel. This is no ordinary submarine. This is the largest ever built by human hands, a floating fortress forged in the heart of the Cold War, the Typhoon-class, the Kula, the very embodiment of power and fear. And tonight, it is going to war. The orders came in silence, transmitted through encrypted bursts from Moscow's Naval Command. They were simple and chilling: deploy, remain undetected, and prepare strike capabilities. Somewhere, thousands of kilometers away, an enemy task force was mobilizing. The world above was blissfully unaware. Politicians spoke of diplomacy, markets fluctuated. People went about their daily lives, but below, in the freezing darkness, the countdown to confrontation had already begun. The Typhoon was not just a submarine. It was a city beneath the waves. Two nuclear reactors pulsed within its steel heart, driving massive propellers that could carry it across oceans without surfacing for months. It housed ballistic missiles capable of leveling entire cities. Inside, a crew of more than 160 men lived and worked in a labyrinth of corridors, control rooms, and weapon bays. For them, the submarine was not just a war machine, it was home. Every sound, every vibration, every shift in pressure meant something. The hull creaked like an ancient leviathan under the weight of the sea. And yet, it was built to withstand the unimaginable. When the Typhoon left port, it was a silent event. No journalists, no crowds, just a handful of naval officers saluting as the massive vessel slipped beneath the waves. Once submerged, she vanished completely from human sight. Only a handful of satellites and sonar buoys might catch a fleeting glimpse of her. But by the time they did, she would already be gone. Her mission had begun. Life inside was a strange blend of monotony and tension. Days blurred together under artificial light. Meals were eaten in cramped mess halls. Men slept in narrow bunks stacked like coffins. Rocked gently by the ocean's motion, the air was filtered, recycled, tasting faintly metallic. The temperature was kept constant, the humidity carefully controlled, but no one ever forgot they were encased in a steel shell, hundreds of meters beneath crushing seawater. Every man aboard knew that if the hull was breached, death would come in seconds. And yet, there was no fear, only focus. The captain, a man forged from decades of naval service, commanded with quiet authority. His eyes never left the tactical displays. His voice was calm, even when issuing orders that could alter the course of history. Around him, officers monitored sonar readings, tracking distant contacts, merchant ships, fishing boats, enemy destroyers. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human eyes, the enemy submarines prowled too. The ocean was a chessboard, and the Typhoon was the queen. Suddenly, a blip appeared on sonar. Faint dot moving. Not civilian. The sonar operator adjusted the gain, narrowing the range. The contact was at extreme distance, but growing closer. The captain's hand tightened around the edge of the console. It could be an American Los Angeles-class submarine, fast, quiet, lethal. If so, it was hunting them. And a hunter that big does not miss by accident. The Typhoon changed course, a subtle maneuver, designed to blend into thermal layers of water. These invisible currents masked sonar signatures, making detection far harder. The crew moved with precision, each man knowing his role. Lights dimmed, conversation stopped. The submarine became a ghost. Above them, storms brewed. Waves crashed in the Arctic night. But the Typhoon didn't care. At a depth of 300 meters, the chaos above was nothing but a faint whisper. Here, the real battle was one of silence and patience. The sonar ping came sharp, metallic, unmistakable. The enemy had found them. The captain didn't flinch, maintained depth. Ready countermeasures. The crew's hands moved over switches, arming devices designed to confuse and mislead noisemakers, decoys, bursts of sound that could imitate the Typhoon's acoustic signature. The ocean was about to become a battlefield, somewhere in the darkness. Another giant was out there, a smaller, perhaps faster, but just as deadly. The question now was simple: who would strike first? The Typhoon's missile silos were locked, cold, waiting. Nuclear warheads slept inside, their destructive potential beyond imagination. The order to fire had not been given yet. But the crew knew that if diplomacy failed above, the captain would not hesitate. The ping came again, closer, louder. The hunter was closing in. The captain gave the order, silent running, all non-essential systems off. Instantly, the Typhoon became a shadow. Pumps slowed, lights dimmed to red. Every man aboard controlled his breathing, aware that even the smallest sound could carry through water for miles. Hours passed. Contact remained. Then, without warning, the ping stopped. Silence returned. The enemy had either broken off, or was now shadowing them silently. The crew waited. Every second felt like an hour. Above, the political situation was shifting. Reports came through encrypted channels. Tensions were rising. Fleets were mobilizing. Governments were accusing. The ocean was no longer neutral territory, it was the front line. The Typhoon's captain stared at the map, a thin red line marking their course. Ahead lay a choke point, a narrow passage between underwater ridges. Beyond it was open ocean, and their target area. If they could pass undetected, they could position themselves for a strike. But if the enemy was waiting on the other side, it could be the end. The order came down from Moscow: clear and final, proceed. The Typhoon turned toward the choke point. The largest submarine in the world was about to test the limits of stealth and endurance. The ocean held its breath. And then, something appeared in the blackness ahead. The black shape ahead was motionless. At first, the sonar operator thought it was an underwater ridge, but then it moved slowly, deliberately adjusting its angle. Not a rock, not debris. A submarine, and it was directly in their path. The Typhoon's captain studied the faint, green-lit display. The contact's noise profile was unmistakable: NATO. Possibly a British Astute-class, quieter than anything Russia had faced in decades. The worst kind of opponent in confined waters. The crew understood what this meant. In a narrow choke point, there was no room to maneuver, no space to hide in the thermal layers. If the enemy wanted to force an engagement, this was the place to do it. The captain spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Helm 1/3 speed, weapons ready. But hold, the order was not to attack, yet, in submarine warfare. The first to fire often revealed their position, and in these waters, exposure meant death. Minutes dragged on. The enemy contact held position like a spider in a web. The Typhoon moved forward, inch by inch. Every man aboard could feel the tension. Even the massive bulk of the submarine seemed to hesitate, as though sensing the danger ahead. Then, the passive sonar picked it up with a faint click of an enemy periscope rising above the waves somewhere behind them. A second contact. They were in a trap. The captain made his decision. Deploy decoys. Right full rudder. Dive 350 meters. The Typhoon's massive hull groaned as it descended deeper, the pressure building around them. Countermeasure pods fired from the launch tubes, releasing noisemakers and false signatures into the water. The sonar operator watched as the enemy's attention shifted toward the decoys. For a moment, they were free, but the relief was short-lived. A sudden, sharp sound cut through the water of the high-speed screw of a torpedo. Bearing 265, torpedo inbound, alarms blared. The crew snapped into action. The Typhoon's size made it powerful, but not nimble. It would take skill and timing to evade. The captain ordered an emergency turn, banking the massive submarine hard to starboard. The inertial forces pushed men against the walls. The sea itself seemed to resist their movements. The torpedo closed in 800 meters, 600, 400. Another decoy launched, its acoustic lure drawing the weapon off course. A second later, the sonar registered a detonation, a muffled, bone-deep boom that shook the hull. The decoy was gone, but the Typhoon was still alive. The captain knew the enemy would not stop. NATO doctrine was clear: neutralize strategic missile subs before they could reach launch position. They would keep coming, wave after wave, until either the Typhoon was sunk, or it was in position to strike back. Ours turned into a brutal game of cat and mouse. The Typhoon used every trick in the book of diving into deep trenches, hiding in the shadow of underwater mountains, drifting silently for hours at a time. Each time they thought they had shaken their pursuers, the sonar would pick up that familiar, distant hum. The enemy was relentless. Inside, the crew was running on adrenaline and rationed sleep. Coffee cups clinked quietly in the control room, then whispered instead of speaking, as if the ocean itself could overhear them. There was no laughter, no conversation about home, only the mission. Then came the signal. It was a short burst transmission from Moscow, heavily encrypted, but its meaning was unmistakable. Satellite surveillance had detected an American carrier strike group advancing toward Russian territorial waters. Orders moved to intercept position and prepare for a demonstration strike if necessary. A demonstration strike. The term was bureaucratic, almost harmless sounding. In reality, it meant a nuclear launch designed not to destroy, but to warn, a single missile aimed at an uninhabited target area. A message to the enemy: stop, or the next one will be a city. The captain stared at the transmission for a long moment. Then he ordered a new course. The Typhoon's nuclear payload would soon be within range. But the enemy knew it too. The NATO sub shadowing them accelerated, closing the distance. Its captain understood the stakes. If the Typhoon crossed a certain line, there would be no going back. In the crew quarters, men checked their gear, adjusted their headsets, and sat in silence. A few scribbled short notes, letters that might never be sent. In the galley, the cook served what might be their last hot meal. Nobody finished it. The final approach to launch position was the most dangerous part of the mission. The Typhoon surfaced briefly in the dead of night to receive final target coordinates via satellite. The Arctic wind howled across the deck. Sheets of ice cracked under the weight of the rising hull. The moment the antenna retracted and they submerged again, the sonar lit up with hostile pings. The trap was closing. Two enemy subs now, one ahead, one behind. The captain's voice was calm but firm. Arm tubes 1 through 4. Load our 3-9 missiles. Deep inside the Typhoon, massive hydraulic systems moved with mechanical precision, raising missile hatches that had not been opened in years. The crew worked in near darkness, lit only by red battle lamps. Every clank of metal, every hiss of hydraulics, felt like a drumbeat in the lead-up to war. The countdown began. 10 minutes to firing readiness. And then, another torpedo alert. This time, 2. Coming from different bearings, the ocean exploded into chaos. The first torpedo was coming in fast, its propeller scream cutting through the ocean like a buzzsaw in the dark. The second was slower, but angled perfectly to catch the Typhoon in a crossfire. The sonar operator's voice was tight, impact in 90 seconds. Both of them. The captain didn't blink. Evasive, hard to port. Prepare countermeasures. Flood port ballast, a dive now. The Typhoon lurched violently, its massive bulk groaning as the crew fought to keep balance. In the missile compartment, men braced against the bulkheads as the steel giant sank deeper. Faster than was safe. The temperature dropped sharply. Ice water pressed against the hull with crushing force. At the same time, to countermeasure, pods launched, spewing streams of bubbles and noise into the blackness. One torpedo veered toward the decoy. The other kept coming. 50 meters. 30. The operator's voice cracked. The captain's eyes narrowed. Blow ballast. Now, in an instant, compressed air roared into the ballast tanks. The Typhoon surged upward like a breaching whale, forcing the second torpedo to overshoot and detonate harmlessly in the depths below. The explosion rattled the hull, lights flickered. But the submarine held together. No one cheered. They all knew this was temporary. The enemy subs would reload. More weapons were coming. The captain glanced at the clock. 4 minutes to missile readiness. If they could hold position just that long, the Typhoon could complete its mission. But holding position meant being a sitting target. The crew worked like men possessed. In the missile control room, hands flew over consoles. Red lights blinked in sequence. Hydraulic locks released. The launch hatches groaned open. Deep above, in the Arctic night, 6 massive missile lids swung wide like the gills of a mechanical leviathan. And then, a sound no submariner ever wants to hear. A third contact. This one, bigger, louder, closer. The sonar profile was unmistakable. A surface ship, not just any ship in NATO. Destroyer, dropping into the choke point at flank speed. And destroyers meant one thing: active sonar pings and depth charges. The first ping rolled through the water like a thunderclap. A second followed. They were locked on. The captain had seconds to decide: complete the launch sequence and risk being destroyed mid-fire, or dive, evade, and abandon the mission. He thought of the orders from Moscow. The demonstration strike was meant to show resolve, but resolve meant nothing if the submarine was gone. He thought of his crew, men who had trained for years, who had families waiting. And he thought of the enemy, just meters away in the black water. Then, just like his own, the captain made his decision. All hands are prepared for deep dive. Secure missile hatches. Abort launch. Gasps filled the control room. But no one protested. Orders were orders. The Typhoon's reactors surged, driving the giant downward at maximum safe descent. Sonar lit up with the splash of depth charges. 1, 2, 3 detonating in rapid succession above them. Each blast shook the hull like an earthquake. Metal groaned. Bolts rattled in their housings. The Typhoon pressed deeper. The destroyer circled overhead, but the Typhoon was gone, sliding into a deep trench where no sonar could easily reach. The enemy subs followed, but cautiously. They knew the trench was a labyrinth of ridges and cliffs. One wrong turn, and a steel coffin awaited them too. For 3 hours, the Typhoon drifted silently. No engines, no pumps, no sound except the creak of cooling steel. The crew sat in darkness, every man listening for the distant hum of an enemy screw. Eventually, the pings grew faint, then faded entirely. The captain waited another full hour before ordering ascent. The Typhoon rose slowly, breaking into the mid-depth currents that would carry them away from the combat zone. When they finally received a new transmission from Moscow, the orders had changed. The crisis above had been diffused. The carrier group had altered course. The demonstration strike was no longer needed. In the mess hall, the crew ate in silence. Some men smiled faintly. Others stared at their plates. They had not fired a shot, and yet they had been seconds from starting a war. As the Typhoon turned for home, the captain stood alone in the control room, hands clasped behind his back. The sea outside was calm again. But in the depths, he knew, the hunt never truly stopped. Somewhere out there, another submarine enemy or allied was listening, waiting. The largest submarine in the world had gone to war, and returned without glory, without headlines, without recognition, And that was exactly how it was meant to be. Because in the silent war, beneath the waves, survival itself is victory.